You are now listening to Relationship Talk with Juanito.
Welcome to Relationship Talk with Juanito, where we discuss everything dealing with relationships. Today, I am joined by a young lady who I've known, all my life. She's a mother, she's a preacher, she's a teacher, she's a coach, she's a mentor, and most importantly, she's my mother. She has a number of doctorates under her name, so we just gonna address her as Dr. Lori Amor. Dr. Lori, how are you?
I'm well. How are you? And thank you for asking.
I'm doing well, just enjoying my Saturday and my time off. So let's jump right into it. So I wanted to bring you on because, obviously you and I have a very special relationship. We've known each other all my life. You've had an opportunity to see, me grow up from a boy to a young man to the man I am today, and you've gotten to see how I have progressed into podcasting, being a relationship coach. And so it oftentimes what I discuss, or not necessarily what I discuss, but some of the things that I see that I want your opinion on, I typically come to you as a first, because you're often dealing in the same spaces that I'm dealing with. Not necessarily the same people, but dealing with relationships, being a coach, a mentor, a preacher, and a teacher. So I wanted to start out with a question.
Okay.
The dynamics of relationships today are weird, right? There's this dynamic between, where it's women versus men, men versus women. And instead of us coming closer together, it seems like we're getting further and further apart from each other.
Mhm.
So from your standpoint, what are you seeing?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. What am I seeing? I do see a lot of people want relationships. And there's nothing wrong with having an idea of what you want in a person. But two things that I see consistently, and it's not to hurt anyone's feeling, but it's a piece of a bigger picture. And that's two things. One, shallowness, and the other one is vanity. Shallowness, as in not willing to go deep in a relationship to get what it is you want out of a relationship. And that's for both men and women. And then vanity. Vanity as in emptiness, just empty. And I really gave this some thought. And what I see is people have been hurt so much and broken so much that now they're just operating in a way where no, they're not going to go deep in no relationship. They're not going to put themselves out there anymore. They're not going to give themselves over to anybody because they don't want to be hurt. Got it. But then because you don't grow from being hurt, you don't learn anything. You're just bitter or angry. You don't take those nutrients out of that. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't taste good. This is just an example. But what it holds inside is good for you. Everybody is going to get hurt in life. But what you're supposed to do is learn from it, be better as a result of it. You can't do anything about that person, but what about yourself? And that's what I mean by vanity. It's like you're empty now, it's nothing there. Whatever you had, it done leaked out. And so now you're still looking for someone, but in a not so good way. For you to ask me that question, and I had been thinking about this. I didn't know what you were going to be talking about specifically, but those were just two things that I really, really thought about concerning what I'm seeing. with people, the brokenness, the pain, the hurt, but then now operating in a shallow, vain place.
Okay. So you said that people aren't willing to go deep. Explain to me what you mean by that.
For sure, I will. So, I write notes to myself when things come to mind. And one of the notes I wrote is you have to give up so much of yourself to be in a relationship. Now, this is where I lose most people at. They don't want to hear it because of things they already been through. They don't want to hear that they have to give up so much of themselves. So I want to parallel the relationship we have with God. There's a lot of people out there that think, I got a relationship with God. He know me, he know how I roll, he know how I get down. But there is no submitting to God or anything like that. But when you're in a real relationship with God, a true relationship with God, you don't have to give up a little bit of yourself. You have to give up all of yourself to be able to have that deep, abiding relationship, to be able to know his voice and to know how he wants you to move. You got to give up all of yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be moving the way you move and putting God on the top of it. So when it crash and burn, then all of a sudden you're going to be like, hey, God, where were you? Why did you let this happen? And God is saying, that wasn't me. I was never leading you. So let me bring that back to relationships. When you put in the time to get to know a person, you put in the time to vet that person, and you're vetted by them. And then you're finding out if you have anything in common, you have anything maybe you want to explore or work on. You go through all of those steps. And then you find out, okay, there's something here. I'm interested in him. I'm interested in her. I would like to get to know them better. Now, if I'm talking to a Christian person, I would say you make sure that leading is all God and not yourself. Because we got things that we like in a person, in people. We got things that we like, but those things are usually the vain things, those things that don't last forever. Oh, he's 6'2" and he got six figures, got a great body and all of that stuff. That stuff don't last that long. But let me stop. Let me go back. I digress. So then you find out that, I kind of want to be in a relationship with them. I want to get to know them more. This is what I mean by going deeper. There are certain things that complicate relationships. You have to be willing to hold back on that. Now, I'm not telling you anything that I think, I'm telling you what I know. When it comes down to intimacy, you introduce it too quick, you kind of blew that relationship a little bit out of the water. Because once you introduce sex, intimacy, the deepness of that particular thing, it's hard to go back to that place where you still trying to get to know them. Because somebody in that relationship may think the act of sex meant that, yeah, we are in a full-on relationship. Whereas one of the people in the relationship may not have enjoyed it. And they're like, I don't want that. Right? I may be going too deep right now. So I want to.
No. So okay, that's an interesting standpoint because I oftentimes hear that you want to know if the sex is good before you get into a long-term relationship,
Mhm.
and although I myself can't say that, I can't suggest one way or the other because in my marriage we started out as just sex and then eventually developed into something down the road. But there's the other side of it, right? Because like the statistics show that like for guys in particularly, guys 18 to 31, 32, 33, something like that, it's like 33% of them are still virgins.
Mhm.
So, you know, there's two different dynamics of it. So, if we're thinking about, from that perspective, whether or not, you want to introduce intimacy early or intimacy late, for the simple fact of figuring out whether or not it's any good with that person, being an older person, I'm still younger to quite younger. I'm younger than you, but being in my 40s, I know that the level of sex that I was having in my 20s and versus what I was having in my 40s is completely different. You know, back then it was, if I could get it every day, you know, it was all good. Now it's like, okay, I don't necessarily need it every day. I don't necessarily need it every other day. There's intimacy in other ways that I have with my wife. So when you're thinking about that, what how would you advise somebody when they're coming to you and they're like, "Well, I want to know if the sex is good."
Okay.
Whether they're male or female, because there may be a situation with a male where he hasn't even had sex before.
Okay. Well, so I've been on both sides. That's, with me working with people with relationships, I'm kind of glad that I had the lifestyle that I did because I know what it's like to be on both sides. So I understand carnal pleasure. I understand sex. I understand the wild, the chandelier. I understand all of that. But I also understand that when you're in that relationship and that's what it's about, and you start trying to build around that, it's difficult because your foundation was laid in pleasure. But in a real relationship, pleasure is just a little bit of what you deal with on a daily basis or, however much time you spend with this person, right? But here's the thing, and I'm going to back up a little bit. If you're in a relationship and it's all about sex, then you're getting what you want if you're getting sex. If you don't want a whole lot more than that, then getting the sex, that's what you want, that's what you're getting. But if you want a relationship, which sex is such a small part of it, you're going to have something more substantial than that, right? Now, I don't counsel people who are not saved, who are not born again believers. And let me add why. Because if you're in a relationship with God, he don't want you out there all over the place having sex with different people, because he understands there's another dynamic that takes place when you become one. If you join yourself to a harlot, that's what the scripture says, you become a harlot, right? So whoever you join yourself to in this act of sex, you become one with them and you partake of whatever it is. Now I'm going to go deep just for a minute. For instance, let's say it's a woman and she's engaging in sexual relationship with a man that's on the down low. Unbeknownst to her, she's partaking of a certain kind of spirit and she doesn't know it, but she finds herself having desires for a woman. How do I know? Because I've counseled women and they did not understand why in the world am I having desires for women. I'm not gay. And I said, well, you may have come in contact with that spirit through a man. So I'm going to start right there because what I'm saying is sex is deeper than just the feeling. It's so much deeper than just the feeling. So if I'm talking to someone who's walking with the Lord, I try to give them an understanding as simple as I can. Sex is the ultimate. It isn't in this culture we live in because you can get it anytime, anywhere. You can get it for free. You can pay for it. You can get any kind you want, right? It's just out there. But what people don't understand is that you're paying a little bit more for the act of sex than what you realize. That's why you may have some men who feel like they can't live without it. They got to have it. They got to have it, and they'll do anything to get it. That's why you have some women that it used to be a time when women were a little bit more modest than they are now. But the more sex you have, the more open you become. The more sex you have, the more you want to explore, the more you want to taste, the more you want to partake of. And I don't mean, like that. I mean, it's like, okay, I done had that. What else can I do? What else can I get into?
So
Right?
it starts to get a little wilder.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Okay.
starts to get a little wilder.
Now, with that being said, in your opinion, do you think that sex affects men differently than it does women?
Well, women have a womb, and there's a deposit made in the womb. As a result of that deposit, the woman can end up pregnant. She can end up impregnated with that man's child, whether that man was just there for to hit it and quit it, whether he was just there for a one night stand, which is the same thing, whether he was just there to try it out. It doesn't matter what he was there for. If he deposits in a ready womb, she can get pregnant. So the woman's body is made to nurture. He makes that deposit. If that sperm makes it to that egg, a baby is starting to be produced. That's kind of how the woman's body is, right? But now, man, on the other end, he's still a human being. He is still a human being. So maybe some men are more inclined to go off of how it makes them feel once they do it, once they have sex. They may be more inclined to that feeling of ejaculation. I've had men explain that just in that moment of ejaculating, that it's like a powerful thing to them. Well, women don't ejaculate, but women can have orgasms. So if
Mm-hmm.
a woman has an orgasm, she can understand what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't heard a lot of women who say, oh, I just want to have an orgasm, because she can just like a man, she can service herself. She can pleasure herself, right? But what I've heard a lot of women complain about is not having orgasms and not having,
Sexual fulfillment?
yeah, the man not really knowing or grasping what to do with that woman's body, that particular body. Now, this is not really my lane, but because of the personality that I have, I do allow people the freedom to express the way that they express, even though they're coming to me for spiritual help. That sometimes they're frustrated. They are extremely frustrated because the man doesn't quite understand this particular woman's body, whereas he may have had a woman who she just wanted the pounding and didn't have any other expectations out of that, which is what men usually learn young. That's what they learn young, and they think, oh, okay, that's all I have to do. When I talk to males, now somebody probably would say, why is a male coming to you about sex? Sex is what I do. That's what I do in my business. I teach prevention education, and it deals with sex education. So I'm very, very comfortable talking about it. I have no hangups, no qualms, no nothing. So when someone's talking to me, they sense that I'm at ease with sex, which most adults that I've talked to are not. Absolutely are not. Being gaudy and talking about sex, using the F word and that kind of stuff, that doesn't make you comfortable talking about sex. That's just talking trash.
Mm-hmm.
But you asked the question about males. So it all depends on how a male started. How was he introduced into sex? I think that's the biggest thing with males. Girls are not introduced into sex with porn and you got to get it. That's what makes you a woman. No, girls are not introduced into sex like that. But most of the males I talk to, especially working with teenage males, they have an uncle or dad or somebody who introduces them maybe to some pornography, and for them to learn how to do it, Now that was shocking to find out, but for them to learn how to do it. And then they encourage them, once you get a little age, go ahead on and do it. Go ahead on and get it. Well, you got these young teenage boys having sex, going ahead on and getting it, and that's all they want. So they're actually training themselves. And as they get older, they start figuring out what kind of things they have to do to get it, if that's just what they want. But there are a few men who slip through the crack, well, I shouldn't say few because I don't know the data on that. But there are some who grow up wanting relationships. They grow up wanting a woman to be in a relationship with. They grow up feeling like, they want sex inside of a relationship. And that's usually probably with males who grew up with a healthy mom and dad relationship, but the parents were open, not open as in showing them sex, but open with affection and love and flirting and all of that. So this male is looking at that and he wants that, he covets that. But I think probably most males, I don't know, because I don't know the data on this particular thing. I just think they were introduced to sex as in get it, have it, you got to
Yeah, it's like for males, it's a kind of like a rite of passage type of situation, right? It's kind of as you get older, being a virgin is looked at as a knock against you, whereas for women, it's like if you're not married by a certain age, it's looked at as a knock against you. Um, so it's interesting that you bring up that males want relationships, and from what I've the conversations that I've been a part of, I've kind of come to the same conclusion. The average man wants some sort of relationship, some sort of long-term relationships, so that he has an opportunity to build his legacy. Because for guys, legacy is important, right? And it typically shows up in your children, right? Obviously, the bad men get most of the attention, right? The guys who show up, get a woman pregnant, and then dip out, they're the ones who get all of the attention, whereas the average guy wants relationships. So like myself, I was always a relationship guy, even from the earliest points of my life where I can remember. I was always a relationship guy, whereas most boys at that young age were like ill girls. I was like girls, yes. But and so it's kind of what led me down this path. And so if we understand that most men nowadays, right, they're not going to be on a platform like this. They're not going to be expressing themselves, but we know through conversations that most of them want relationships. On the flip side, a lot of women are wanting, they're still wanting relationships, but they're wanting relationships later on in life, because they want to, go to school and, chase money and, not have to deal with men based off previous issues in relationships or whatever. So for whatever particular reason, they're pushing relationships down the road. If you were counseling a young man on wanting to wanting to get into a relationship, what are a few things that you would advise him?
Well, give me an age. So, because when you say a young man, I think about the young people that I work with. Give me an age of a young.
Okay. So let's go with, well, obviously we know that studies show that women mature faster than men. So let's go with a 28 to 30-year-old male.
Okay, that's a great age. That's a great age because by the time he makes it to 28, the front of the brain has developed, and even people have stopped looking at him like a young person. At 25, most adults, especially my age, we still kind of go, yeah, you're wet behind the ears, right? So we got to see them as young. But by the time you start getting like 28, 29, most people look at you as a whole as a grown man, right? as someone who should be doing something and know what you want to do, have a future, goals laid out, and all of that. So if I was talking to a 28-year-old and he was interested in having a relationship, first I would tell him to make sure he's at a place in his life where he wants to be. And then he needs to settle in his mind, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a pal, a buddy, somebody that can hang out with you, y'all get along? What are you looking for? Because you want to be intentional. You do not want to lead someone astray. If you know that you just, I'm 28, I ain't trying to settle down, then be honest and roll like that. Meet people, but when you're talking to them and having fun with them, let them know, well, I'm not ready to settle down. I just maybe want to go out on a few dates, have some fun. Be honest, right? As jaded as a lot of women are in this day and time, they still appreciate a man that is honest right off the bat. So if he's not looking for that, then he needs to be honest. But let's say he is looking for that, and he's kind of confused about how to navigate this world of women. All right. So I would ask a few questions like, what do you like? What do you like? Let's deal with the vanity part. What do you like? Okay, you like Black women. Well, I'm particular. I like, dark skinned women. Okay, so you like Black women, you like dark skinned women. What else do you like? Tell me the kinds of things that you like, right? So as he's telling me the kind of things that he like, they're usually things that you can see visually. I want a lady with a nice shape, a big butt, big breasts, or small hips, or whatever. So we'll get past all of that. And then I'll help him to understand those things are superficial. They are superficial. They're going to last for a while. If you're 20, 30, it's going to last for a while. But after a while, those things will begin to change. If you start introducing children, if you start introducing a sedentary lifestyle, all of that. So those things are fine. But those things are, you don't build a relationship off of none of that. You cannot build a relationship off of you having a pretty girl. Let me tell you why. Because anything could happen. Anything, and I don't mean to be morbid, but anything could happen that could change how she look, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now she's with a man who only wanted her for her looks. So if y'all developed a stronger relationship, now she's gonna feel like, something happened. She got real bad acne, something, anything. And so now she's not looking as pretty as she was. Well, in her mind, that was the thing that tied you to him. And so something done happened and you feel like, man, now this is in the secrets of your aloneness. You're feeling like he don't really like me no more. He just tolerating me. And this is real. This is the kind of stuff that happens. So I would tell him, okay, like what you like, but understand all of that's superficial. Okay. Don't close the door on a light-skinned girl. Don't close the door on a girl with a smaller figure and not a big butt and all of that. Because see, that may be the one that carries you over into your elderly life, and that's your ride or die. So like what you like, but don't close the door on something else, because you might be trying so hard to get this dark-skinned girl with this big butt, these big breasts, and trying hard to get that. And then you get it and you feel like, what have I got myself into? So once
Mm-hmm.
we get past the superficial stuff, let's go deeper. What do you want out of the woman that's in your life? Okay. If you don't know, it ain't time for that. You got to
So
figure
let me
that
let,
out.
so let me
Okay.
let me ask you a question. So one of the when I'm counseling or not counseling, when I'm coaching, try to get my clients to understand that there's a difference between, and I think you're describing what I'm about to say. There's a difference between chemistry and compatibility.
Mhm.
Chemistry is short term. That's the thing that you see, that you touch, that that you hear that make you feel good, right? It brings out it gives you that spike of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin,
Mhm,
right? And but it fades, right?
mhm,
Compatibility are the things that you share with that other person. It's values, it's the things you have in common, the direction that you the beliefs and the direction that you want for yourself as individuals and for your relationship and eventually your family. But I agree with you 100%. If where I differ a little bit
mhm,
is wants versus needs, right? So what I want is this woman who got this big butt, big breasts, beautiful skin, blah, blah, blah. But what I need is somebody who, if I lose my job tomorrow, she's got enough character and enough love and admiration for me that she's not going to be like, all right, you lost your job, bro. I'm out.
mhm,
She's
mhm,
gonna be like, hey, I got you. I'm not gonna take over, but I got you until you can get back on your feet, right?
mhm.
And so that's where I coach, right? But it's the same thing, right? if
Yeah.
if you don't know what you need in your for yourself, if you don't know what you need for yourself, how you gonna know what the other person needs from you?
Mhm, mhm.
And so if you ain't got that part figured out, advise them like take time to become self-aware,
Mhm.
right? Figure out yourself first before you go down this path of seeking a relationship with somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In essence, we were saying the exact
Right.
same thing. We were saying the same thing because, parents are responsible for giving you an idea of what to look for. Your dad and me together, there should have been things that you gleaned from him and gleaned from me that you wanted. It's like, yeah, I like that. Your dad he had a little adventurous streak. He would take y'all up in the mountains and, put you on the back of a motorbike. And he would just do stuff. I didn't do any of that, right? I had no interest in that. One time I got on the motorcycle with him and I wanted to just punch him out because I wanted him to stop and let me off. That was not my thing. But he exposed y'all to the adventurous side. But he also exposed you to taking care of all the bills. He exposed you to taking care of the vehicles. He exposed you to all of those things that cause the household to run. He exposed you to that. Why? Because I was a stay-at-home mom. I was at home when we were living in Germany. I was at home. But what did I expose you to? Cooking, just for y'all that are listening, no one the chili thing. But I expose you to cooking, cleaning. I expose you to running of the household, making sure everything. But I also expose you to discipline. I was probably the stronger one of the disciplinarian because your dad was in the military. And in the unit that he was in, he was always gone, whether it was gone 2 weeks to training or this and that. So I didn't have a choice but to be the major disciplinarian. So parents are responsible for setting a framework for children to glean from what they want. Now, not everything from your parents you gonna want. I have a little bit of a traditional, I'm a little bit of a traditional wife. I always have been. Now, I was married a couple of times, and in those times, I had traditional ways. I got it from my mom and dad. They had specific roles in the home. So, um, your sister, she didn't much care for me cooking and making plates and said, he's sitting down to eat, and she didn't care for all of that. So she did not glean that from the parents. She didn't like it. She didn't like it at all. But what did she glean? She gleaned, her children learning at a young age, figuring things out. Well, that's how you and your sister were. You guys were at a young age learning how to do all kinds of things that maybe other kids were just playing. right? So I said that was the long way to say, you know, parents set the foundation for what you want. But if you don't have a traditional home where the mom and dad is there and you're able to see these roles, maybe you got a strong mom, or maybe your dad is he's the sole parent. You get what you can get from them. And sometimes you gotta have to figure the rest out unless you have uncles or aunts or other people that's in your life and you start gathering information. But if you make it to 28 and you don't know what kind of woman that you don't need to be trying to get a serious relationship yet. You need to maybe go out on a few dates, have fun, and just kind of see,
Get coaching.
yeah, get coaching. I'm kind of partial to this, right? But here's another thing though, Juan. You're getting to know yourself. You know what you like and what you don't like, right? I never did well with a romantic man when I was dating. I didn't like romantic men. That did not do nothing for me. That was just something that it didn't move me, gifts and flowers and all that. That never moved me. But if you showed that you had to put the potential to take care of a woman, take care of children, a lot of the masculinity that people are referring to is toxic now. I don't understand that. But if you showed a lot of that, I was interested. I was interested because that communicated to me, you can take care of me. Now, that sounds negative. You can take care of me, but that's how I was brought up. I was brought up in a family where they had specific roles. My dad went out and worked, and he worked hard. He provided. He bought the house. He bought all the cars. He did all of that. Now, my mother, she wasn't a stay-at-home mom. She was a nurse. She didn't work all the time. I'm sorry, I'm missing a word here. It'll come to me in a minute. But my mom was responsible for cleaning. She was responsible for cooking. She was responsible for taking care of those 6 children. Those were her roles. So I grew up in that. So, of course, I'm going to want a man that's like my dad, one that holds down everything. That's what I saw, right? Now, that didn't mean I couldn't grow up and have my own company, because I do. That didn't mean I couldn't grow up, and
Have a life for yourself, right?
have a life for myself. Right. Now, we're talking in this particular setting. So I'm not telling everything I went through because that's not what we're here for today. But at the end of the day, I'm married and my husband holds traditional roles. He pays all the bills. He takes care of everything that deals with running the house, running the cars, and all of that. Now, I'm not here sitting on my butt doing nothing. I work, I have a business. I contribute a lot to the inner workings of the home. We both get off from work. I come home, I'm thinking about cooking for him. I'm thinking about, preparing food. That's because that's how we operate. But now that may not be what you want. You may not want those traditional roles. You may want a partner who likes to hike. Y'all go out and go do trails and, do things like that. You may live a totally different life where y'all cook together. You just got to know what you like, because you don't want to get a traditional wife partner. Get a traditional partner and you are an opposite of that. You got
Yeah.
to get what meshes with you, but you got to know you first. You
Yeah.
gotta know what you
You have
want.
to learn how to, you know, to be independent within an interdependent relationship,
Mhm.
right? For guys, right? Because we were talking about men going into relationships. And one of the things that I advise guys is, although a lot of women are claiming that they don't need a man and Which when I tell you, when I bring this up, it's a kind of, when you hear it, it's kind of confusing if you're not in a relationship coaching space, right? If you're just the average guy, you'll be extremely confused by what you hear, because what I hear oftentimes is, I don't need a man, I want a man, which signals that I'm independent and I can do bad by myself, right? That's what I hear when I hear that. But then in the same sentence, I'll hear, but I want a man to lead.
Mhm.
I want a man to take the responsibility of figuring out where the date is, figuring out what time, figuring out, how he's gonna come pick me up, paying for it, blah blah blah. Which is all leadership qualities. Which, why I say it's confusing is because you say you don't need a man, but yet you still have these requirements that he be the man. And
Mhm.
so it's a signals crossing
Mhm.
that causes confusion. And so what I advise guys is, like, during that self-awareness phase where you're getting to know what you want and what you need, also be working on your leadership skills, right?
Mhm.
Figuring out first how to lead yourself out of a paper box or a cardboard box, so that when you go in and you're actively looking for relationships, you can show leadership qualities. Take yourself out on dates with yourself first, right? So you can learn about different restaurants and different places around your city or town, so that when you're actively seeking a relationship with this person, you already know, hey, this place is good, right? On Tuesdays they got great tacos. You find out she likes tacos, bam, that's your spot, right? So boom, hey, Miss XYZ, I'd like to take you out on Tuesdays. I understand you like tacos on Tuesdays. This place got tacos. It starts from 7 to 9. I'd like to take you there if you're interested.
Mhm.
Right? It puts her in a position to be at ease, and she's looking at it from a standpoint like, okay, boom, he got his stuff together. But a lot of guys, they're like, yeah, I know this stuff, but I don't know what to do because, like, Miss Independent don't she's got her own. And then, if I try to advise her on these if I even think about trying to make a suggestion, I get shot down. So what are you in a situation like that? What would you advise him? Being that you're a woman,
Advise the guy or the
yeah, advise the guy.
Okay, advise the guy. So I'm talking to a guy who is self-aware, he knows what he wants, and he's trying to
He has interest in a young lady who is, she's an independent woman, and she's made that known to him that she's an independent woman.
Okay. Okay. Well, I would advise him to communication is key. Being able to articulate your thoughts and your feelings, which is where a lot of men, not all men, which is where a lot of men get tripped up. Okay.
Hmm.
Becoming self aware and learning what you like and things like that, learning how to communicate is vital to dealing with women. You need to know you feel and you need to be able to communicate that. All right. So you're out on a date with a woman and she's letting you know sassy, she's letting you know she independent and this and that right there. You say things like, I respect that. I respect that you are putting in the work to become who you want to be. I have respect for that. Do you know how a woman would feel with this guy sitting across from her, not putting her down or saying she's wrong? Because culturally, things have changed. So men need to understand she may be saying, I'm independent and I'm this and that. That may be true, but what she's saying is, I'm taking care of myself. I'm
Hmm.
needy. I'm not going to be a burden on you. So the man can say, I have respect for that. Tell me about what do you do? Tell me a little bit more about that. What's your goals and dreams, right? Show an interest, right? Find out. And then the more you find out, you're going to see most of what she's doing is reactionary. I have to do this. If I have a child, I have to do this, but I want to do more than working at McDonald's. right? So it might be because she have a child, or it might be because she has had bad experience. She came up, her mother didn't have anything, the dad didn't do anything for her, and so she don't want to get caught in that same way of life. So she know, okay, I'm going to school, I'm going to get an education, and then I'm going to get me a good job, and I'm going to create a business. But see, what's the catalyst for that? The catalyst may be what she experienced in her childhood. What can a man do? Well, show her interest. Listen to what she's saying. Don't be threatened by it, even if she comes off that confusing way. And just I want to do say something concerning women. It does sound confusing, but it's not. When she says, I can do bad by myself, or she says, I don't need a man. She's saying the same thing. I don't want a man where I'm going to end up doing bad. I'm going to end up just messed up. That's what she's saying. She's not saying I don't like men. She's saying, basically, without being able to articulate that well, she's saying I don't want a jacked up man. I don't want a jacked up man. And you might say, well, you picked him. You chose him. See, when I talk to women, I come at it from a totally different standpoint. When I'm talking to men, I have to be always aware of the fact that I'm a woman talking to a man. So I don't come at them like I'm over them and I'm trying to teach them. I just share with them what makes life a little bit better when you take time to understand women, right? I talk to them like that because I can't teach a man. I couldn't even teach you. All I could do was be a good mom and set a good example of how a woman should be, but teaching you to be a man, that rested on your dad, completely on him. Okay, so what can he do? Again, he can listen to her and he can ask questions. He can say, okay, so your goal is to take this company to the next level. Now he's interested in her. So he may say things like, so where does a relationship fit into your scenario, right? Because she may actually herself not be ready for a relationship, and it may be revealed in that conversation, right? But
That's a good question.
I tell women the same thing. A man is not, he's different from a woman, but he's not that different as in human beings. Human beings want to know that you're interested in them, that you care about them. There's a lot of nuances that are hit and miss, but at the end of the day, if you just have good communication means, one, I'm listening. I'm listening to what you're saying, then I'll know what to talk to you about, right? If you say, if the whole conversation is about how, oh, my ex hurt me, and then the ex before that, he hurt me, and I just, then the guy might want to say, so do you think maybe you may not be really ready for a relationship that could cause you to be triggered? Something could happen that could trigger you over your past, but the person wasn't even trying to do that. Just bring up good things to make the person think, right? I'm drawing from two places. I'm drawing from my own life. I think I have enough life experience to know how to choose a good man. I may not have stayed married to the men that I was married to, but it was due to several things, not just them, me too. So I'm drawing from my own experience, but I'm also drawing from wisdom of lessons that I've taught. And one of the things that I know is a game changer is good communication. And if you're not a good communicator, it's not a good time to be dating. You have to learn how to communicate, because if your goal is to date someone, be in a relationship with them, and maybe one day marry, before we even get to the marriage, the dating part. You know, if someone asks you, how are you doing? And you do this, you are communicating, but it's not enough details there. You could
Mm-hmm.
say, you know, my day hasn't been that great, but I'm gonna, I'll get over it. Well, you communicated enough to that person to know that you didn't have a great day. You're going through something. But if you just do this, that's not enough information for me to know, do I leave you alone or do I keep pressing? That may not seem like much until you get in a relationship. And now you're saying, can you just leave me alone? let me just let me just work through this. Why are you having to say that and you're in a relationship? Why the person didn't learn that? Why y'all didn't talk about that? You know, when I'm going through, I just need time to just chill. I just have to chill before I can. Why are y'all not having those kind of conversations? Communication is the key. And I'm gonna tell you, communication is the key to sex as well. Do you talk about sex when you're in the beginning, the dating phase? Maybe not the beginning, but once you start figuring out, yeah, I want to date. Do you talk about sex? Yes, you talk about sex, right? You do it in a respectful way, but now you know if you, I'm trying to find some calm words. If I'm talking to someone that's not saved, if I'm talking to saved folks, the conversation is way different. When I say saved people, I mean born again Christian people. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to them, the conversation is way different because one, you should not be having sex outside of marriage. You should spend the time getting to know them and then trusting God to also reveal to you what you need to know and how you need to move forward. And if you're really walking with God, you got to trust Him. He will match you up. You will be matched up with the right person. I have not met anybody who got married and they truly believe that God put them together who had any issues. I've never met one. And I can speak for my own life as well, you know. But if I'm talking to someone who doesn't have that kind of faith and they're, you know, asking me these kind of questions, all you have is to try to match yourself. That's all you have, you know. And most of the time it usually, well, I can't say it usually don't work, but past experience says when you go off of your own knowledge and that's it, you can only know about a person what they say and what you see.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the other stuff that you don't see and that you don't know, right?
So are you talking about from like a spiritual aspect?
Yes, from a spiritual aspect, God knows. God knows. He knows you. He knows the man. He knows the woman. He knows the man. He knows what a good match is. But God don't look at superficial stuff. That's where a lot of women that I've dealt with, they so caught up on the superficial that the chances of them really getting someone that's deeper than that, it's slim, which is why they end up staying single for a long time. When you're open to God, you got to be open all the way. It's like, I want a man. I want, Lord, you know what I want. I want somebody that, if you're traditional, I want someone that will provide, but I'll work too. I want somebody that's good with, you know, raising children, or if we don't have children, good with pets. If we don't have pets, someone who wants to enjoy life, or, you know, however we flow. Well, if you trust God and you want this 6 foot guy, great body, all of that stuff, but you say, God, I give it over to you, and God gives you someone a little bit shorter than that, you know, maybe a little bit pudgy or something like that, you have to trust God because you don't know the end. Let me tell you, quick testimony with my own marriage. I'm only a traditional woman because of what I saw growing up. Now, there's a lot of craziness that happened in our home, but those things that I gleaned as a young child from my dad and my mom. But I knew that ultimately what I liked is how my dad was. My dad was 6 feet, he had these great hands, great feet. He wore sandals, but he worked at a what you call a pipe shop. It was Mead's pipe. So he worked with his hands. He wore gloves all the time. But when he took his gloves off, he had these beautiful hands. He was 6 foot, 6'3". But anyway, so as a girl, that's what I see, that's what I like, that's what I want. But when I became a born again believer, and like many women, I had suffered so many disappointments and letdown. I didn't want nobody. I didn't want to be in no relationship. I'm older now. I'm good. I can live the rest of my life without anybody. That wasn't God's plan. When I first met my husband, initially looking at him, I didn't look at him to be someone that I was interested in physically. I was kind of happy about that, but I'm going to fast forward to when the scales fell off my eyes. When the scales fell off my eyes, if you will, and we started dating, I realized this man was exactly what I wanted. He's 6 feet.
What you needed.
What I needed, and what I wanted, because he had characteristics of my dad that I actually loved. So when I tell you, you got to trust God. God will give you the right person. When you first meet them, they may not visually be the person that you're attracted to or what you think you want. But if you trust God, see, God knows what's going to happen down the road, right? Now, I was a little short, I'm 5 feet even. I was a little short far as my husband go. He recognized, wow, she's a little short. But I tell you what, when he had the heart attack and cancer, nothing about me came up short. Nothing about me came up short, because I was a 24-hour a day, around the clock wife. It's easy to be good when everything going well, but you know what you got when things hit the fan. That's when you know what you got. And he made the right decision, right choice.
So I'm glad you brought that up because, obviously I wasn't going to bring that up unless you did. During your during this time that you speak about with him, having cancer, obviously that puts a very a huge strain. It can put a huge strain on a relationship.
Mhm.
If you could talk about a little bit about, what you as the wife, went through and how you were able to make it through it and how it affected your relationship.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. One of the things that I say is it's important that your relationship is built on more than sex and superficial things, because there's going to be things that's going to try you in life and will try that relationship, so you'll know what you really have. So before my husband got to the cancer, he had a widowmaker. He had the kind of heart attack that normally kills people. And the day he had the heart attack, I was out of town, and I thank God for my daughter, because we were in Atlanta and he had the heart attack, and they called me and I needed to get home, but I wasn't really in a good way to be driving, and my daughter took over and really broke the law getting back to Columbus. 90 miles per hour. Yes, my mind was on my husband, but my eyes was on that speedometer. And, God had mercy on us. And so when I got there and I saw my husband, he was completely out. There was nothing, he was out. And so for the next couple of days with him being out, it gave me time to think of how I was going to do what I needed to do and all of that. And he finally woke up, but he was in the hospital total of 9 days. And I'm going to tell you, have you ever heard the saying, it's your reasonable service? You ever heard that?
It sounds familiar, but I can't say that I've really heard it before.
Right. Well, it's something that most church people aren't, they would know what that means. It's a scripture, part of a scripture. Well, when my husband came up and I found out he was going to be in the hospital for 9 days, that became my reasonable service to be in the hospital for 9 days. That meant that I needed to make sure that I got my life in order in a way where when he opened his eyes or whatever, he always saw me. He always saw me. It was important to me that he knew I'm here. I'm here. So what I would do is when he would be awake and I know I needed to go bathe and get some downtime or whatever, I waited till he was awake and I would get one of his friends or his son to come and stay long enough for me to go home and do the things that I had to do, right? And they were fine with it because they were going to be visiting anyway. And that was the only time that I left. Now, I've known people whose spouses went to the hospital and they would go home every day. I didn't do that because I set an example of if something happened to me, this is how I want my husband to roll. I want him to roll like that. I want me to be so important to him that sitting at the hospital all day ain't nothing but a thing. So that's what I did. It wasn't long after that he got diagnosed with the cancer. So going through that was way different. And I've asked him about telling his testimony before, and he gave me permission. So I'm going to tell you like this right here. If your relationship is built on sex and you go through something like a heart attack and then cancer, prostrate cancer, ain't nobody going to be having a whole lot of sex. So you have to have something so much more deeper than that. I'm not saying sex is superficial because sex can be amazing, right? It can be healing. It can be so many things. But when you can't do it, are you going to be okay? Wife, are you going to be okay? Do you feel like you need to go out here and start flirting around, getting attention from men and do it? Oh, I ain't going to have sex. I just want somebody to tell me I'm beautiful. Tell yourself you're beautiful, right? Keep your mind stayed on your husband, right? Husband, your penis still getting hard, okay? That's been happening since you, 11 years old? All right, go take a shower. Go take a shower. Be true to your spouse. Be true to your spouse. See, that's part of the building process too. Those feelings may not go nowhere, but your conviction and your commitment to your spouse. See, this is how you go deeper. This is how you go deeper because it's not going to always be happy times, hunky dory. And it's even like that when you're dating. I wish people would learn to be more honest in dating. If you just want to hook up, say it. Just be honest, just say it. Don't hurt nobody. Don't lead them on. Don't string them along. Don't do that. We live in a culture now where women are at a place where they just want to hook up. So just be honest, and you don't have to deal with all that craziness. But this is the thing. When you do try to settle down, every woman you ever been with gonna be passing through your mind and passing through your bedroom, passing through your imagination when you with the one. Every man you ever been with, whatever you with this guy now that you really like, if his stroke ain't right, his downflow ain't right, his whatever he do ain't right, some other guy, you're going to be thinking about it. See, that's why you got to stop. You got to get all of that out of your spirit. You got to get all of that out of you so that now you feel like you're ready to really, really date. You don't want to take all of that into a relationship with you. Get yourself together. I'm not telling you nothing that I don't know. After I got a divorce, I stayed single for 7 years. 7 years. In that 7 years, I didn't date. I didn't have sex. I didn't touch me. I ain't let nobody touch me. I didn't do nothing. I worked on myself. I worked on some of the things that was wrong with me. See, once you get a divorce, you can find, then, oh yeah, I wasn't all that. I wasn't as good as I thought I was. I was trashing them and talking bad about them that I didn't realize that you didn't make life good for them. You was a nagger. You was, nothing was ever right. Nothing was ever good enough. You always had complaint. So when you learn that about yourself, you got to work on that. You got to
Mm-hmm.
get you together. So when you do present yourself to someone, you're presenting whole, not someone that's broken in pieces, but you still have desires.
Mm-hmm.
You jacked up, but you going off of your desires. You're not healed enough. I think you said that earlier and you just kind of threw it out there. You said get a coach. The best part about a coach is, and I'm going to talk about you for a minute. You are my son and you have coached me, not directly, but you have made me realize by asking me questions about things that, you know, I had some things that I had to deal with, some fears that I had to deal with. Sometimes just pointing stuff out to people and saying, you're afraid you did. No, but you ask them the right question, they'll come to the conclusion that, well, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I'm afraid. So, do I recommend people getting a coach? Absolutely. It seems like you'll just be paying someone to listen to you, but these people are skilled at making you listen to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has to tell you you're saying dumb stuff. When you start hearing yourself, you'll be like, that was so dumb what I just said. When you start trying to have these arguments to win, arguments to make points and all of that, you get a coach, that person they're skilled enough to make you see that you're combative. You always want to be on top. You always want to win the argument. You have no humility. But when you realize that yourself, what'll happen is when your partner or husband says something, instead of you now trying to, top them or get even or whatever, you'll say things like, you know what? That's good what you just said. Or you'll say things like, yeah, you're right. You're right. And then you free them up to be able to talk to you more. Now, this I know about me and Juan. I do know this. I'm going to try to condense it. But what I do know is biblically and just in general, men don't like the combativeness, the nagging. They don't like that. What ends up happening is they end up internalizing. They don't talk to you, they don't share nothing with you, which is why that girl on the job, she's a great listener and he's talking and she's going, yeah, oh, that's real deep. That's good. Yeah, he's responsible for what he do, but you set him up to be able to talk to someone else when he could talk at home. And I'm so glad that in them 7 years, I learned that because my husband will come to me and he'll just pour out of himself and, talk about all kinds of things. If he's having a tough moment, he'll tell me, right? And I learned how to respect that because women can get together and talk all day long. Men normally don't do that. But when they do talk to you, they're trusting you.
Mm-hmm.
If you abuse that trust, they just don't talk to you no more. That's it. He don't go deep. He stay in the shallow water. He don't talk about his feelings. He don't give you that. I told women, I said, keep in mind, men are raised by women in a regular setting. A boy
Mm-hmm.
is raised by his mom, right? What is a mom doing? Oh, you're my little sweetheart. You're so amazing. Look at you riding that bike. And that mom is always sewing into him, always sewing into him, you know. And then he comes and he's like, Mom, I got a boo-boo. Well, he don't go to his dad telling his dad that because the dad gonna be like, okay, all right, all right, all right, you okay. You okay. But the mom is gonna be, she's gonna listen. Yeah, you got a boo-boo, but it's okay. So she's gonna be nurturing him and doing all of that. That same boy grows up and becomes a man. When you're with a man, that little boy gonna show up on occasion. Resent that. I said, I ain't his mama. I'm not his mama. Hate it when he act like that. I said, you missing it. I said, because your period will come on. You cramping, done had a period since you was 12 years old, but you want him to come over there, baby, can you get me some Midol? Can you give me some this? And you want him to just nurture you and love on you. But then when he's having a moment where his little boy, you resent it. You, when he gets sick, he's always at the extreme. No, when he gets sick, he's at that place where he was when he was a boy.
Yeah, when he was 6.
And all you got to do is just say, babe, can I get anything for you? Do you need anything? Yeah, you don't treat him like a baby, but you nurture him. Can I get anything for you? Do you want anything to drink? You know, go put the blanket up over. Many a times my husband has been out, just whatever. He's 74 years old. So, you know, he has some things going on occasion. If he's laying on the bed, it's nothing for me to go in the room and get the blanket and put it over him. That's not a big deal. I'm not treating him like a baby. I'm just nurturing, right? By nature, I'm not that great of a nurturer. I raised 2 children, and both of y'all, I wasn't overly affectionate. I was not overly affectionate with y'all, but I nurtured y'all, you know? Those are 2 different things. You can nurture your husband without treating him like a boy. The more you do him like that, the more he trusts you, the more he want to let you know things, the more he want to say, I messed up at work. I messed up. And I mean, I talked to my boss about it. Everything's good, but I just felt so bad. How could I make a mistake like that? Right now, if we had a room full of women, I would say, how many of y'all husband talk to you like that? Probably about 3 or 4 hands would go up. The rest of the hands wouldn't go up because women said stuff like, that was so dumb, you did that. You knew better. How could you make a stupid mistake like that? And you think that's okay? It's not okay because he internalized what you have said, and he's now don't want to talk to you about things where he's vulnerable and he feels bad. My husband come home, he'll tell me, he said, he just told me this. It's funny now. He said, I went to the ATM. He said, I tried something new. I put my card on the ATM thing, and that's all I had to do is tap it. And then he said, I set my card down on my lap. He said, when everything was done, I was waiting for my ticket, that comes out. And he said, all of a sudden, I was like, this machine done took my card. It done took my card. And he said, the car behind him, he told him, y'all got to wait. This machine done took my card. He said he did something else. And when he did it, he looked down and he saw his card on his lap. And he finished up his thing and he came home and he said, you're not going to believe this. And he told me about it. Do you know why he told me that? That don't seem like much. But he told me that because he trusts me. I could have said all kinds of stuff. I bet you felt like a fool, didn't you? No, you laugh with him.
It's the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old self coming home and telling you the story. I told a client that they mentioned that every time they go past a spot, their partner talks about how they were a part of that. And this individual's response was kind of like, oh, like, I'm kind of tired of you telling me about this. And I just simply told that person that is the youthful person that lives within him showing up. And because there's a level of excitement there, the same way that, when you do something as a kid and you get it done, you want to show off to your parents or show off to your friends. So change your perspective, change how when that shows up, just cheer that person on.
What would a mother
validate, show excitement.
Yeah. So what else did you do? You told me that happened, but you never told me. What did you do when you got home? Draw out more facts around that. You know, the fact that you said this just the other day, it was me and a really close friend and another person that's close to me. We were in the room and the men were in the other room talking. Everything they were talking about is things they have talked about every time they get together. Same stuff. But they were laughing and they was enjoying the conversation. And I said to my friend, I said, now see, women don't do that. Women will get together. And the moment you bring up something that you've told them before, it's like, yeah, you already told me that. You know, it still has the same effect, but women can recover and say, well, you're going to listen to me again, you know, or something like that. But if we did the same thing men do and just listen and hear them out, it teaches us how to hear our man. Like I said, my husband's 74 now, so he's increasing his stories of what used to be. But when he's talking about them, I don't have a reference for the things that he talked about because I didn't grow up like that. I didn't grow up the way that he did. I never picked cotton. I never saw cotton until, you know, I was with him. But this is what I can do. I can say, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. How did you even learn? Who told you how to pick cotton? You know, you can engage them more and make the story even better instead of going, oh, there you go again, talking about those old cotton stories. Now, don't do that. See, this is what women don't like. Can I go back to what I said about shallow?
Yeah.
And when you're shallow, you don't want to go deeper. You like it where you are. You don't have to put forth any effort. Is it effort on my part to hear my husband telling a story about something from his past? You know, the effort is me listening and being attentive and even engaging him, right? Because I don't have to put forth that effort. I could go, oh, okay, all right, yeah, you told me that, and leave the room because I don't want to hear it. But I'm in a relationship with this man. I'm in a relationship. I want to make it to the end, right? I know what it's like not to make it to the end because I didn't put forth the effort. I was okay. And all these women that be saying, men come, they come and they go. I get another one. I ain't worried about him, right? You have no clue what that's doing to you spiritually. You have no idea what's happening to you. It's keeping you from being able to connect. It's keeping you from being able to make a commitment. It's keeping you from being able to go deeper, right? So we're at 16 years now. And it feels like some days feel like we just got married. We're sitting around talking like, you know, two young people. But I expect that because we both put in the work, we put in the effort. Me and him both agree anybody can stay married. Those of you that's on the verge of getting a divorce, you know, serial cheaters that may be hard to move past, abusers, people that are physically abusing you, those things, I'm not talking about those things. So I want to make sure. But if you guys are just struggling and it's an everyday struggle, it's none of the abusive stuff or non-serial cheating or whatever. You're just having a hard time just getting on the same page, getting on the same sheet of music. There is help. Both of you have to be willing to humble yourself and not give up the right to be right. Just give it up. Give up the right to be right and be willing to hear, be willing to listen. Because sometimes when people tell you stuff, Juan, you know this, it hurts. My husband has got on me many a times. I'm the type of person when I go to work, I want to go in. If I got to be there at 5 o'clock, I want to be walking through the door at 5 o'clock. I want to go in, do whatever I got to do. That's it. I don't want to talk to people. And I've always been like this. I don't want to talk to people. I don't. But the problem with that is if I hit traffic, if something happens, like I can't find my key or, you know what I mean? It sets me back. He doesn't like that. And he has expressed that. It hurts my feeling when he say, you know, I do not like it. I get to work before you do. I do the things that I need to do. And then I'm waiting on you. It's good when you walk through the door at 5 on the dot. But when you walk through at 5:10, I don't care what the excuse is. You're late.
Trust me, I know. I have the same conversation.
Bottom line, that may hurt your feeling and you might want to be defensive, but what you have to say is, you're right. That's why people get in the weeds, because they don't want to admit your spouse is right. You don't work. He comes home every day. The house is not clean. You don't start cooking till he get home. But if he say something about it, you get an attitude. You get mad and you start talking back. And so he gets to the place where he don't say nothing. And guess what? He eats before he come home. He stay at work later. So the closer it is to taking a shower and getting ready to go to bed. That's how. Now I do know that about men. I do know that about men. Women will just go to the room and shut the door.
So I want to kind of shift gears real fast because we've been going for a little bit, but there is a video that I want to show you and I want to get your opinion on it, and then we'll close out.
I'm almost afraid to make this video because I know it's going to be some backlash. But I'm starting to believe that the church is keeping Black women single on purpose. I am starting to believe that the Black church is keeping Black women single. And what I mean by that is, I want to believe in my heart of hearts that when churches have Women's Day, have women's conferences, when you go to these women empowerment, conferences, and they are allowing people to be vulnerable and transparent, and they are sharing how they healed from certain things and how God's word helped them to heal, which is true. I'm trying to figure out why we are almost intentionally leaving out that God's word also says that a man is a woman's covering and a husband is part of, or should be part of, an honorable, godly life. None of that is ever mentioned in a lot of these spaces. There are more women in the church than men. I'm almost afraid to make this video.
Okay. All right. So what are your thoughts on that video?
Her perspective is that the church works to keep women single by having Women's Day and conferences where the women are getting delivered and healed, and she's saying the part that's missing is God.
The discussion, basically what I got from it was like, everything that you said, but the part that she believes is missing is that basically how men fit into the picture based off of the covering that through the spiritual aspect of being covered by a man. She feels like that aspect of it is oftentimes missing from those type of conferences or those type of events. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I have several thoughts. One is, it depends on the church, and if the church is women heavy, a lot of women.
Well, she was specific on she said Black churches.
Black church. I got that. But if it's a Black church, but it's a lot of women, then most likely they're going to cater to the women. So these conferences, which I just came from one today, and it's exactly what she was talking about. Not the negative, but there was a portion within the conference where it took a turn from a woman's panel about business and things like that to all of a sudden now it came up about men. And some of the women responded in a way where there was clearly, brokenness, hurt, pain, all of that. Okay, that's needful. You got to have a place and a space for women to get healed from the brokenness. Now, if that church has men in it, well, yeah, you don't want them there in that conference. You need to be having another conference teaching men for them to get free as well, and then teaching them how to be in a relationship with women. You have to teach those things. With the women, there was a man, it just so happens this happened today. There was a man there in the conference, and he brought forth a word. He wasn't on the panel or anything. He brought forth a word, a very, very good word. And so what she was saying is that other piece. Well, he brought forth that piece, and those women responded very well. They needed that. But before that happened, they were already weeping, crying, they were getting free from whatever was going on with them. So when it come down to the church, there's a lot of hurt, broken people in there. So the church may not be it may not be a bad thing that these women are working through all of this stuff. That's a good place to work through it. The world not gonna do it for them, but it's a good place. So they do need that. And I noticed over the years, I've been walking with the Lord going on 30 years. At those type conferences, you do see that a lot. And it's helpful for the women. I don't know anything about male conferences, but I do know that men get together. I've never been privy to what they talk about or what they do in there, but I do know that that does happen in church as well. I don't know if the church is working to keep them single. I don't know if that's being done on purpose. It could be done inadvertently.
Yeah, I think obviously I have some experience going to church. I think probably done inadvertently.
Yeah.
And the male conferences are probably this is what and don't get me wrong, this is not factual in any standpoint. This is just me logically trying to think through this.
Mhm.
I think that male conferences are going to have a little bit more of the relationship talk added to it because of the leadership aspect of relationships, right? It's on the man's part. And there's a crossover between leadership within your own life and a crossover between leadership in your relationships and in your workspace. It's kind of all it's kind of all on the same level, right? If you can lead yourself, you can lead your partner, you can lead at work. And so I would believe that those type of discussions are being had at male conferences. At female conferences, I don't necessarily know if that other aspect is always there where okay, yes, you go through the healing process. Now, you would be better off to speak about this. That's why I asked the question.
Mhm.
Um, yes, the healing aspect is often there, but I think the question that she would be asking is that other side is the advice about how you are to react and respond and hold yourself in relationships being given from
Mhm.
a spiritual aspect at these type of conferences.
Right, right, right. Well, I'm a visionary. So I would say she poses a really good idea. For instance, you do the conference and the women have that worship time, and usually in that time is when a lot of the healing, a lot of those things take place. If you have a skilled or strategic leader who knows how to get in and deal with those issues. But an added piece to that would be the next day learning how to date, learning how, uh, waiting on God, not doing a lot of the fleshly stuff, all of those things. So I can see where adding that to the conference, those type of things, and then bring in maybe a male and female in the room together portion where you talk about respect and honoring in the hearing of both of them, honor men honoring women and respecting women, women honoring men and respecting men. So that won't be a bad thing. I think that will give a well-rounded conference. Now I've seen them go left. I have seen these
What
workshops
what
like
what do
this
you mean?
go left. Well, I was in one and it was an all male panel, and shout out to the men. They were great. But one of the women in the group was extremely upset, hearing the men talk, and she just blew up right there on the spot, and then she walked out. So I've seen them go left where when you have men and women in the same room. So that might be that might be why they do the conferences just women only, to keep anything from happening. I don't know, because sometimes people are so broken that, when they hear the opposite sex, they get angry. So but I get what she's saying, but I don't think that would be on purpose, because I'm gonna go out just a little bit. If the church was keeping you single, say for the purpose of money, something like that, because the single women, they pay the tithes and all that. Well, you get more money if it's a husband and a wife. So it seemed to me that you would work to get them married. That would be
Mm-hmm.
more money. I can't see that the church would purposely be working to have single women, but I could see them catering to women. If that's the largest group that you have, I could see them doing things to uh you know bless the women.
Okay.
That's
Well,
that, that's my thought on that. But yeah, I don't spend a lot of time in the conferences like that, but that's my thought. Yeah, I did go. I supported. I can't say I supported. I got an invitation and I went today, and it was a nice size conference. And yeah, so, but I haven't went to a lot of female conferences. I've never done that.
okay. Well, Dr. Lori, I thought we had a fantastic conversation today. I know we touched on a lot of different topics that I think will be beneficial to a lot of people, whether they're man or woman. Um, so with that being said, if somebody is hearing this and they wanted to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Okay. Several places. One place is Facebook Messenger. Okay, so it's Dr. Lori Amore, but Amore before is a space and apostrophe. So you'll see that just my face or with a pink outfit on. Also, Instagram, about that youth life, about that youth life, one word. And or you can go on my website, forevermoreinc.com, and leave a message there if you like.
Okay. Well, Dr. Lori, we'll make sure that we have your contact information in the description below. And it was a pleasure having this conversation with you. And I look forward to having you on again in the near future. And with that being said, for everybody, if you haven't had an opportunity to check out my book is available on Amazon. It is Aligned Love, the modern guide to finding and building fulfilling relationships. Book that takes you through the steps of getting yourself prepared for dating and finding a long-lasting relationships. And it touches on a number of different topics, everything from self-awareness to dating strategies, strategic positioning within dating spaces, whether it be online or in person, and also talks about the healing yourself through therapy, and also talks about such topics as interdependence, codependence, and independence. So again, it's Aligned Love. It's available on Amazon, and that the link for that will be in the description below. All right, Dr. Lori, once again, thank you for joining us. And until next time, you guys be safe out there.
All right. Thank you for having me, Coach Robinson.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a great one.
You too.
Bye. Bye, everybody.